As kids, we believe that anything is possible. But as we grow older, adults begin to tell us what we can and cannot do. And then that world of possibilities that was once in front of us, it begins to close in. And instead of believing in what if, this beautiful, wide open perspective, we slowly learn to believe in what is. How do we embrace limitations? That's what I want to dive into next. And as an artist, of course, how I pursue that question is, I pursue it through art. Artists work in all different kinds of ways, painters, sculptors, watercolors, etc. And I work in quite unusual ways.
Phil Hansen using objects like bananas, live worms, and his own torso to create his art.
He uses the grease from fast food hamburgers. You're watching Phil Hansen paint the Mona Grisa.
And for Hansen, it's all about taking a step back to take a look at the big picture.
My journey to art, if you talk about that nice straight path, it was not. The style of art that I absolutely fell in love with was pointillism. But I was spending so much time perfecting dots that it actually began to take a toll on the nerves of my arm, and my hand began to shake. And eventually it degraded to the point where I had trouble holding anything. And this was the straightest line I could draw. And so I dropped out of art school. And then a short time later, I quit doing art completely. I went to a neurologist about the shake. The doctor sat me down and gave me the very simple yet hard diagnosis of permanent nerve damage. And as I was sitting there in that kind of awkward silence, the doctor, he sort of leans back in his chair and he's like, if your hand shakes, why don't you just embrace the shake? And so I was trying to figure out what to do with that advice. And more I was like, he meant embrace the shake as a metaphor. But I wondered what would happen if I took him literally. So that day when I got home, I put a piece of paper on the wall, grabbed a pencil, and I just started letting my hands shake naturally. And I started making all these scribble pictures, and I realized that I could still make art. It was gonna look different, but there were still possibilities there. Then I also had the idea, I was like, wait, what if I made limitations? What if I intentionally created constraints, and what would come from that? And so I began exploring. And one of the ideas that I came up with was I wanted to see if there was a way that I could paint a picture, but not use a brush. Another time, I took some wires, I hooked the wires to a car battery, and I realized with those sparks, I could actually burn a picture of Nikola Tesla. And another time, just with gin and juice, making a picture of Snoop Dogg. In these projects, I kind of had this realization that limitations could actually be a passageway to creativity. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit. What we are going to do next is I want all of you to pull out your phones and I want you to pull open this webpage. I'm going to give you some instructions of what to write, what to draw, and we're actually going to end up making a huge artwork together. All right, are you ready to see what you created? As we zoom out, check that out. I posted my phone number online and I asked people to call and share a story with me about a limitation in their life. I spoke with people from over 30 countries in total in every single state, discussing their stories in detail. We thought our limitation was huge, but then as we dove into it, as we found a way to get creative with it, that's when we realized ultimately it was that self-limiting belief that was huge. And after an entire month of handwriting, I found myself staring at the sea of stories, these birds floating in the ocean.
Amazing energy. His engagement was fantastic.
I loved how he got everybody involved. He invigorated everybody.
It made me change the way I look at everything that I do professionally.
He blew my mind.
It's in those moments when there's points of struggle that we can differentiate ourselves. We can take the way things have always been done and reimagine them in a new and different way. Change is constant. So being able to constantly get creative and get flexible with our beliefs, that is where ultimately really profound things happen. And in that process, we can redefine ourselves. So instead of telling each other to seize the day, we should be trying to remind ourselves to seize the limitation. Thank you.